Hello, today is the third day of January 2023, and I am going to be reading from the book called The Tavistock Institute, which was written by Dr. John Coleman, and is to explain to you how you introduce ideas and you buy into those ideas. And then what happens is gradualism, as it takes place, the majority begins to accept these ideas and really never researches these ideas is what Dr. John Coleman speaks about. So welcome today to my channel, Discerning What is True. And we're going to be reading that today about this to again point out the importance of how you're being brainwashed day by day. So chapter 29, Topological Psychology gets the U.S. into the war in Iraq. Kurt Lewin's Topological Psychology Standard Fare as Tavistock Institutions was taught to select American scientists sent there to learn its methodology, and the group returned to the U.S. to spearhead the drive to force Americans to believe that support for Britain, that is the instigator of the war, was in our best interest. You see, it seems as though Britain tells us what to do, and we are just a little boy, and we just continue to follow them. You see, as an example of that. Um, and we've done this every time, over and over again, especially with the World War One, Two, also with the Argentina deal with Margaret Thatcher, who we supported and helped in many ways, providing what I call satellite images and stuff like that in the past under Reagan, who gave that support to them. It's almost as though there is a treaty between the United States and Britain. And when any time Britain decides to go to war or such and such gets involved in anything, we follow lock and step behind them. Well, because their psychological deal is to get the American people to get along with it. They need your consent. They always do, folks. That's what this is about. These are madmen. These are people who decide they're going to get rid of certain people somewhere just because they're a certain color, or mainly is what they want, either some type of resource to steal it from them, and they'll do it any way they can. You follow me? So what we're going to talk about, again, I'm getting off subject a little bit, that is, so topological psychology is still the most advanced method of inducing behavior modification, whether in individuals or in the mass production population groups, I should say. Unhappily, topological psychology was used all too successfully by the mass media in rushing America into a British contrived situation in Iraq, another war in which we had no business involving ourselves. The professional liars who run this country, the horrors of the media, the treacherous spokesman for the one world government, that is the New World Order, use exact topological psychology against those who say we should not be attacking Iraq. Bush, Baker, Haig, Rumsfeld, Rice, Powell, General Myers, Cheney, and those in Congress who fall all over themselves in a servile display of bootlicking, brainwashed the American people to believe that President Saddam Hussein of Iraq was a monster, a evil man, a dictator, a threat to world peace who had to be removed from power, even though Iraq had never done anything to harm the United States. Yeah, never even came to our shores to attack us, folks. Never. Why are we responding? Oh, Great Britain's our friend, and we just follow them lock and step. You see, but they've got to get your consent every time, and they use these slick tricks that you are not aware of, and that's what this whole thing about Tavistock's about: the brainwashing. While there may have been some truth to the allegation that Hussein had done some terrible deeds, the same could be said of Wilson and Roosevelt, magnified a million times, of course. Tavistock's war on the U.S. Constitution has completely dumbed down the American people to where they somehow believe that the U.S. had the right to attack Iraq and remove its leader, even though the Constitution expressly forbids such action, not to mention that it violated international law and the Nuremberg protocols. As already stated, it takes a contrived situation to get the American people fired up. I remember talking to a gentleman actually at a here in my county where I live at a farmer's market, and we kind of got a little heated exchange a little bit. And he said he was from Germany. Um, he just recently came here, probably within 5 to 10 years or so. And his point was simply to say we need to go, we need to attack Libya and get their oil. And that's what's transpired. Is that simply is that um, hold on a second here. Uh, Contrive to basically steal other people's deals here. But anyway, he said it's yes, it's worthy of us to take care of the whole war situation. In other words, we need to go in and steal their oil. Well, the funny thing is that the United States never got the oil in the first place. You see, it was just a way of actually destroying the country itself, and it's kind of sad. So so in World War One, it was the atrocities committed by the Kaiser. In World War Two, it was Pearl Harbor. Um, in Korea, it was the ghost torpedo boats of North Korea attack on the U.S. Navy that never happened. In Iraq, it was the deceit and lies of April Gillespie. In Serbia, it was the concern of Madame Albright for the alleged persecution of Albanian illegal aliens flooding into Serbia to escape the economic misery of their homeland. That was the excuse for her self-righteous crusade against Serbia. Madame Albright was a shame person, folks. Just did all kinds of evil things. And Leslie Stahl of CBS News did an interview with her. I remember, is it okay that we killed these many children? She thought about it. Yeah, yeah, I think it was worth it. You killed that many children and you say it's worth it. That is a psychopath, folks. Pure and simple. Tavistock coined a new name for the illegal Albanians. Henceforth, they were to be called Kosovarians. Of course, the profile in the program American public made no objections with when Serbia, without just cause, without ever having harmed the United States, was mercilessly bombed for 66 days and nights. The real danger to peace comes from our one-sided policy towards Middle East nations and our attitude towards socialist government. Appeals to rally around the flag in the early stages of World War II were pure racist topological psychology. And it was repeated in the Gulf War, the Korean War, the Iraq War twice, and in Serbia. And also, he doesn't include, it would also include Vietnam. Soon it will be North Korea again. The U.S. has persecuted that nation for more than 25 years. Only this time, the excuse will be that North Korea is about to drop a nuclear bomb on an American city. In all these wars, the American people have succumbed to the big drum of Tavistock brainwashing under disguise of patriotism, tinged with heavy dose of fear. Bang night and day, Americans believed the myth that Germany was the bad guy, bent upon ruling the world. We rejected the threat of Bolshevism. Anyway, it's amazing, you see. I'm not going along with Hitler, such and such, but in my report simply is Britain got us to get involved in the wars. You see, it was all about economic pressure. They didn't want competition, you see. Twice we were whipped into frenzy against Germany. We believed our controllers because we did not know what we were brainwashed, did not know that we were brainwashed, manipulated, and controlled. And so our sons were shipped off to die in Europe battlefields for a cause which was not America's cause. Immediately after Winston Churchill became a British prime minister after he ousted Neville Chamberlain because he had succeeded in making a peace agreement with Germany, Churchill, the great paragon of belief and respect for international law, began breaking international laws that govern civilized conduct during war. Acting on the advice of Tavistock theoretician Richard Crossman, Winston Churchill adopted Tavistock's plan for terror bombing of civilian populations. We were to see the same policy being carried out in Iraq and Syria. Churchill gave the Royal Air Force orders to bomb the small German city of Freiburg, as F-R-E-I, Freiburg, an undefended city, and one on the list of such cities in Germany and Britain, which both sides have agreed in a written pact was an open, undefended city not to be bombed. It is amazing. Yeah. These are madmen, people, and mad women. On Saturday afternoon, February 27, 1940, a raid on Freeburg was carried out by the RAF mosquito bombers, killing 300 civilians, including 27 children at play in schoolyard, plainly visible at school. And if you can do that back then, folks, that was in 1940. We're now at 2023. You think that it's gotten any better 83 years later? No. This was the start of the RAF's terror bombing campaign against German civilian targets, the infamous Tavistock-inspired Prudential Bombing Survey, which was directed solely against German workers' housing and the civilian infrastructure. So it's all to do with that. You see, it had nothing about fighting the soldiers on the field. We're not going to do that. We're not going to play by what we call a level playing field here. We're going to go out here and bomb innocent people, and working such and such. Same thing what happened also, folks, in the war between the states. Same thing happened in the South. You've got to be punished for this. So we're going to punish your civilians. We're going to destroy their livestock. We're going to burn their houses. That's what took place here in the 1865 and 64 in the South. So it's been going on for a long time. Tavistock assured Churchill that such mass terror bombing would bring Germany to its knees once the targets of destroying 65% of German workers' housing was reached. Churchill's decision to launch terror bombing against Germany was a war crime and remains a war crime. Churchill was a war criminal and should have been put on trial for hideous crimes against humanity. The bombing of Freeburg, Germany, without consultation with France, was the first departure from civilized conduct in World War II, and the British government was solely to blame for the air raids by the Germans, which followed. Churchill's terror tactics were followed by a letter by the U.S. in the unclear war against Iraq, Serbia, Iraq again, and Afghanistan, which began in March of 1999 in the same vein of no mercy as displayed by Churchill. And by the way, we were in Afghanistan for over 20 years, folks. Over 20 years. Kurt Lewin, whose hatred of Germany knew no bounds, developed the policy of terror bombing of civilian housing. Lewin was the father of the Strategic Bombing Survey, deliberately designed to destroy 65% of German workers' houses and kill in an indiscriminate manner as many German civilians as possible. German military casualties were far exceeded by civilian casualties of the war as a result of bomber B.O. Harris and his heavy bombers night raids by the RAF on German worker houses. This was a major war crime that has still gone unpunished. This gives a lie to the propaganda put out by Tavistock that Germany began such terror raids. The fact are that it was only after 8 weeks of terror raids on Britain had caused heavy damages to civilian housing and non-military targets, and taken thousands of civilians' lives, that the Luftwaffe retaliated by attacks on London, which in reality was just really a small speck to compare to what the British and the United States did. Germany's retaliation came only after countless appeals by Hitler directly to Churchill to stop breaking their agreement, which the great man ignored. The great man. Everybody worships Churchill, folks. The guy is a fucking liar. He always was. He was also a guy that couldn't handle his money pocket. But if you research who Churchill was, his parents didn't really care for him. So he became a madman because his parents never truly loved him at all. That's a fact. In fact, they were never around, his parents, his mom or his dad. And what they do, there was them to be in all these parties in the late 1800s, and he would be left either in a crib, which is the wrong thing to do, and two, he was kept by a babysitter, so to speak, who didn't care. So you see where this is, how this produces a madman. You see, Churchill, the master liar, the consummated liar, with the help of and under the direction of Lewin, was able to persuade the world that Germany started civilian bombing as a deliberate policy when, as we have seen, it was Churchill who initiated this. British War Office and RAF documents reflect this position. The damage done to London by the Luftwaffe was relatively mild when compared to what the RAF did to German cities, but the world never heard about that, you see. Your media is all controlled. Even back then, the media was controlled. Even back during World War I was controlled. Even further back to the Civil War in the United States, it was controlled. You see, Um, so anyway, I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of this. Let's continue on. Churchill's bulldog character was created by Tavistock. His true character was never revealed. The Caligula's bombing of Freeburg paled in shadow compared with the cautious Caligula's barbaric, unchristian, inhumane fire burning of the open, undefeated city of Dresden that took more lives than that subsequent atomic bomb attack on Hiroshima. The bombing of Dresden and the timing of the raid was a cold-blooded decision taken in consultation with Tavistock by the great man to cause shock and awe and impress his friend Joseph Stalin. It was also an outright attack on Christianity, timed to take place during Lent. There was no reason, military or strategic reason, to firebombs Dresden, which was selected as a target by Lewin. In my view, the firebombing of Dresden crowded with German civilian refugees fleeing from the Russian onslaught from the east. When Lent celebrations were being observed, ranks as the most hideous war crime ever committed, yet because the British and American people had been thoroughly programmed, conditioned, and thoroughly brainwashed, hardly a murmur of protest was heard. The war criminal bomber Harris, Churchill, Lewin, and Roosevelt got away with this terrible crime against humanity. Folks, the Allies did far worse things than even the Axis powers did. You get it? We're not on the right side here. On May 5th, 2005, during a state visit to Berlin, Russian President Vladimir Putin held a joint conference with German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, told the German newspaper Bild that Allied forces cannot be absolved for the horrors of World War II, that included the bombing of Dresden. The Western Allies didn't abound with any special humanity, he said. It's incomprehensible to me to this day why Dresden was destroyed. There was no military reason for it. Perhaps the Russian leader did not know about Tavistock and his presidential bombing survey that ordained the terrible bombing, but certainly readers of this work will now know that why the barbaric and horrific atrocities were carried out. To return to Rees and his early work at Tavistock involving brainwashing experiment on 80,000 British armed troops after a 5-year reprogramming of these men, Rees was confident that his system of making mentally stable people ill would work on any mass group. Rees was sure that he could give treatment to mass groups of people, whether it was desired by them or not, and without the victims ever being aware of what was being done to their minds. When questioned about the propriety of his actions, Rees responded that it was unnecessary to first obtain permission from the subjects before commencing with his experiments. The modus operandi developed by Rees and his gurus proved to be successful. The Rees-Lewin method of tampering with minds proved highly effective and still is wide use here in America, and even in 2005. We are tampering with our opinions manufactured for us, all without our permission. What was the purpose of these behavior modifications? It was to bring about forced change to our way of life without our agreement and without even being aware of what is happening. From his brightest students, that is, Rees selected what he called my first team to become the first level of his invisible college graduates, that is, shock troops, that were to be placed in key positions inside the British intelligence. The Army, the Parliament, and later inside the Supreme Headquarters, allied as expeditionary forces. The first team graduate went on to fully control General Eisenhower, who became no more than a puppet in their hands. First team graduates were insulated into every policy-making body in the United States. You wonder how things really got really bad after the World War I? This is why. The first team graduates made U.S. policy decisions. The secret team, as they were to become known, was responsible for the public execution of President John F. Kennedy in full view of America and the world as a lesson to future presidents that they were to be obeyed, and all directives received from the Olympians. That is, the Olympians are the Committee of 300. Kissinger was one of many first-team graduates placed in a position of authority inside the U.S. government in the OSS and the FBI. And a Canadian citizen named Major Louis Mortimer Bloomfield ran Division 5 counterintelligence of the FBI during World War II. In Britain, it was H.B. Dix, who was responsible for placing first-team graduates in key intelligent positions, the Church of England, the Foreign Office, and the War Office, and to mention the Parliament. So you see they're planting moles into the office here. So we've been told some of these are communist agents, but they possibly can be. But I'm seeing here also that Tavistock was also involved heavily. Tavistock was able to conduct wartime experiments in peacetime, giving all the facilities made available to it. And with this experiment, our experience could tighten its grip on the U.S. and British military establishment and intelligence services. In America, Tavistock's signature experiments changed the American way of life completely and forever. When this truth is recognized by the majority of our people, when the far-reaching control of Tavistock exercises over our daily lives is comprehended. And that's what's happening right now, folks. There is no energy crisis. There is no climate change except what they're doing. You see, they're doing this thing to force us to give up our freedoms in every way they can do it. This is all a part of Tavistock, period. Only then that we'll be able to fight back. Indeed, we have not by then become total shell shock anonymous. Continue. By 1942, the command structure of Britain and U.S. military intelligence services had become so enmeshed that they could no longer be separated or distinguished from each other. That is correct. There's a company here in the United States, where I live at, here in the United States, that was called United Defense. And they were making the Bradley defense weapon machine, that is, weapon. And eventually, United Defense was bought out by a British military agency. And you realize that, folks, our Senate didn't say anything about it. Do you understand what's going on here? So what's happening simply is that the United States and Britain are becoming one in a military unit here also. And this is happening. You see it. This is not a car manufacturer. This is a military contractor. And yet that is owned by a British company now, or a British corporation. It's B something. I can't remember. I want to say BAE. But anyway, they bought that company out. So in reality, simply as we are seeing, we no longer in some ways have control of our own defense manufacturers. I'm not saying all of them. I'm just saying some of them already are taking place. This gave rise to the many weird and strange policies followed by our government, most of which policies directly contradict the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and ran contrary to the wishes of we the people, as expressed through our elected representatives in Congress. In short, our elected representatives have lost control of our government. Winston Churchill called it a special relationship. Oh boy. At the close of World War II, a number of carefully selected and profiled senior political military figures from Britain and the United States were invited to attend a conference chaired by Rees. What Rees told the group is taken from confidential notes compiled by one of those who attended the meeting, but who had asked to remain anonymous. If we propose to come out in the open and attack national social problems of our day, then we must have shock troops, and these cannot be provided by psychiatric. These cannot be provided by psychiatric based wholly on institutions. And this is part of the whole shock. That's part of what you hear in the media is the shocking things that are happening across the country here the last 2 or 3 years. But it's been going on for a long while, folks. What's taking place over in the far west, California, Oregon, and Washington State is just a part of their shock troops, as they would do, in what they're doing, such and such. For example, just to give you an idea, these cities will actually, who's giving these drugs to these people that are living on the streets? I believe that they are doing it themselves. The city governments are doing this. So they never will actually be able to get anywhere in life. They'll be dependent on drugs for the rest of their lives. That's why you have to have principles. That's why you got to stand, you see. So he says we must have mobile teams of psychiatrists who are free to move around and make contact with local situations in particular areas. See how this is? It's like a little nest here and here and there. It's causing disturbance. In a world driven completely mad, groups of psychiatrists linked to each other, each capable of influencing the entire field of politics and government, must be the arbiters, the power cabinet. Could anything be clearer? Here was Reese's advocating lawless conduct by a group of psychiatrists linked together to make up first teams for his invisible colleges, free from all social, ethical, and legal restraints, who could be moved to areas of mentally well population groups, which, in the opinion of Reese and his team, needed to be made ill by reverse psychology treatment. Being well included any community that had successfully resisted mass brainwashing as a result of polling showed. First teams would be followed by shock troops, such as we see among the environmental groups. This is not surprising, that the EPA is a monster created by Tavistock. The environmental concerns, which concerns were generated by Tavistock themselves and passed on to the Environment Protection Agency via shock troops. The EPA is not the only Tavistock operated creature. Abortion and homosexual are Tavistock created and supported aberrations. Because of Tavistock created and supported programs, we in the United States have suffered a terrible degradation of our moral life, our religious life, the debasement of music through the aberration of rock and roll music, which became progressively worse following a relatively tame introduction by the Beatles, followed by rap and hip hop, destruction of art, as we see pushed by PBS, Public Broadcasting Service, and the magnified degenerate objects of derision. We have seen a proliferation of the drug culture and intensified worship of the golden calf. The lust for money has never been higher in any civilization than this current one we're in. These are the bitter fruits of Tavistock policies implanted in our society by invisible college graduates, that is, who became school board members and insinuated themselves into leadership roles in our churches. They also insulated themselves into important party political positions at city and state levels, wherever their influence would be met. This is their whole goal. Their whole goal. Their whole goal is to destroy the fabric of our country, and has been doing it very well. These people are so brainwashed that they're destroying everything that's valuable. They never take the look in the mirror and ask themselves, "What am I doing? Am I doing this for? Oh, this is some great plan. That's what I want to do. I want to change everything." And reality is simply, yeah, you're changing everything, and you're destroying the whole fabric, the foundation of this country and other countries. Now you see why in the Middle East, I don't condone it, but there's a completely lockdown somewhat of protection, because they see what's going on in the West. And they're saying, why would we want to be involved with this, you see? Because this would destroy our own country. And then we decide to bomb these countries, and so to speak. You see, that's another point. I got off the tangent here. The graduates become members of labor mediation boards, school boards, universal boards, trade unions, the military, the church, the communication media, the entertainment media, and the civil service, as well as the Congress, to the extent where it becomes obvious to the trained observer that Tavistock has taken over the reins of government. Reese and his Tavistock colleagues that succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, having captured control of the major institution upon which government rests. The parent, the Committee of 300, must be delighted with the progress made by the Young Infant Club of Rome. The 4th of July has been rendered almost meaningless. There is no longer any American independence to celebrate. The victories of 1776 have been negated, largely reversed, and it remains only a matter of time before the U.S. Constitution is discarded in favor of the New World Order. And the tender of G.W. Bush, you see that process accelerated. And with that, that's chapter 29. And I insert everything has become novel. It's just like it's like a cake, but the cake is all this stuff that's actually bad inside. But they put this nice frosting on the outside. It makes it look good. It looks really nice and everything. But when you cut in a slice of it and begin to see it, or you even try to eat it, you realize it's rank. It'll make you sick, and that's what they've done to our country. They've ate out the important fabric, the existence of this country. What made this country a great country is because of what these people have done. And these mindless people who have been brainwashed and believing. And I talked to someone recently, 3 or 4 months ago, maybe less, and they believed in mental health. Unbelievable. The attitude was simply, we just need more money to solve this problem. That's all they care about. But you know that money goes for it. It goes in their pocket. You see, they are they come along as some great group walking through a city as though they know it all, and they don't know shit. They're brainwashed. They're completely brainwashed. These people are. So anyway, that's chapter 29 for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you talking, and hopefully we will do another video later in the day. I've got to do a few things today, so I wanted to get this done. So this is chapter 29. Thank you for your attention, and may you be blessed today. All right, bye-bye.